this is part 2 of the arena. It's the same event. There was a crash originally, so this tournament was scheduled to resume today. There's an hour and 20 minutes left. The standings, they are going to be the same as before the problems arose. This is part 2 in the first part of the arena. It's the same event. There was a crash originally. I'm just going to check the chat here and check the stream to make sure that we are live. The standings, they are going to be the same as before the problems arose. So as far as I can tell, we are live both on Twitch and on YouTube. Please let me know, anyone in the chat, if sound is okay, you guys can hear me all right, see me all right, and the usual stuff. If there's any issues, we still have a few minutes to hopefully fix it by the time that the tournament kicks off. Hello, C. Ronaldinho and Karan. Let's hope that this is okay. One slight concern might be that you can hear the noise, the fan noise of the PC. With the wiring, there are a couple of short cables. It's kind of difficult to separate the microphone a little bit too much or enough from the desktop. But hopefully it does not bother you guys and the viewing experience. Don Mill says, "What's good, my dudes? Damn, are you in a closet?" This is a small little office in our new place. We moved in, myself and another chess streamer who perhaps some of you will know, Fiona, aka Fionketta. We just moved into this place, and this is stream number 1 from this new office. It's a cozy little office, but hopefully the important things, the internet, the microphone, the lighting, all these different things, hopefully all these elements will be okay. All right, so it looks like people are here. I'm not sure if nobody has said if the sound is okay. Please let me know if the sound is good. Ooh, okay, so I'm being told that the sound is not so great. So let me just check if I can improve that. Okay. How about now? Did that make any difference at all? Did that? Because I think I may not have had the right microphone. Okay, yeah. So I did not have the right microphone selected. So I appreciate Jackie Jr. Who said that the sound was already okay, but I'm glad that we can do a little bit better. So 3 minutes to go, guys. This is an exciting event. So for those who are unsure what exactly is going on, Agadmator, he's one of the biggest, for a very, very long time, the biggest YouTube chess channel out there. And I don't really know the details, perhaps somebody else does, but basically this is some kind of collaboration or sponsorship by Cake DeFi. Cake DeFi is one of various sort of new products out there within this sort of new paradigm of DeFi, which stands for decentralized finance. Most of what we know in the world of finance, what many of us, at least people of my generation and older, we grew up with, thinking about what is now sort of grouped as traditional finance. And that's more centralized finance, and now this is kind of a new wave of projects that are working within this exciting space of decentralized finance. And it's also been a little bit of a wave of crypto products involving themselves with chess, which I don't know. I guess different people will have different opinions, but I think it's exciting because, of course, crypto, like in any world where it's in any way linked to finance and technology and innovation and things like this, there tends to be sort of a lot of wealth generated by that movement. And if there can be a collaboration between crypto and chess, it seems like that would be a net gain for chess. All right, so yes, so that is, and we've got a minute and a half to go, so I should just quickly run you guys through these top 10. By the way, the first prize is, I believe, 1 full Bitcoin. So that is, I think in today's terms,
a little bit north of $40,000. Not bad at all for an online event, and no surprise that it's drawn in the heavy hitters, right? So in 10th place we've got Grandmaster Cake and Space. I'm not sure if he's officially people are aware of who this person is. I have very strong suspicions, but I don't want to say the name just in case. But people can say, yeah, in the chat, Not So Clear is saying it's Jordan Van Forest. That's what I believe also. So he was winner of last year's Tata Steel, 2700 plus Grandmaster these days, incredibly strong player. International Master Vaten Elende. It sounds like a very Dutch name. In 9th place, we've got Zaven Chesmud. That's Saven Andriasian, one of the strong Armenian 2600 or so Grandmasters. Pragnanda in 7th place, Indian Phenom. We've got Ninja 64, who I believe is Alexander Injic. Not a Grandmaster that I know too much about, but clearly very, very strong performance, having not lost any game so far, and has 61 points. In 5th place, Andrei Yesipenko. He made headlines some time ago, around a year ago in fact, when he defeated Magnus Carlsen and sensationally ended Magnus's winning streak. Speaking of Magnus Carlsen, Dr. Championstein is there in 4th place, clearly within striking distance of the top 3 in the podium. We've got Rob188, a very young FIDE master as far as I know. Finally, in 2nd place, Alireza Firouza, a household name at this point, perhaps the most exciting chess talent out there, ranked number 2 in the world in classical, but he's not in the top position here in this event with an hour and 20 minutes to go. By far, the most dominant performance in the first part of the event belonged to none other than Hikaru Nakamura. So, playing under TSM FTXH. So, with that all said, the tournament has just started. Let's take a look at the games. So, first of all, why am I unable to show you guys? Excuse me. I was hoping that there would not be a technical glitch so soon. There we go. Okay, so everything is okay. And the first game, I'm sorry that we missed the first few seconds of this, but it's with a minute and a half on the clock. Hikaru with the black pieces, a minute and 20 seconds for Alireza Firouza with the white pieces. It's a maneuvering game. We've got a time control of 2 minutes and 0 seconds. In this particular structure, it's an incredibly complex structure. I'm not quite sure where it started off. Maybe it looks a little bit like a Benoni, but not quite. In any case, let's talk about the position itself. Knight h5 is targeting this pawn. White had to make a decision, and White actually captured this pawn, but perhaps missed this intermezzo, knight g3. So Hikaru has picked up an exchange, and well, that's enough for a decent advantage here for Hikaru for sure. He lashes out with f5. That's an aggressive move, but the point is, if you take me, now you open up the queen and the rook. Rook f8, that was rejected basically by Firouzja not to take, and now d takes e5. Very interesting committal decision, because you do give a protected pass pawn here. f4, queen takes g6, and king h8, just giving up that pawn instantly. d6 creating a complete mess on the board here. The bishop on e3 is hanging, but you aren't in time to take it. Queen d7, rook g8. I like this idea of rook g8 with queen takes h3 to follow. I'm surprised he didn't go for that. Not quite sure what he saw that he didn't like about this. Maybe he just wanted to pick up this pawn ASAP. Knight f8. Now, the bishop is prepared to play bishop takes h3 because the queen defends this rook. So the queen is actually in a little bit of trouble here. How do you actually get the queen back out and into the game? Queen f7, but bishop e6 perhaps. I'm not sure what Alireza has planned. He's got queen c7, but bishop takes d5. That's going to force an immediate exchange of queens. That is the position that we see. Rook takes d5. Alireza picks up one pawn, c4, trying to untangle this rook. Now, Alireza is trying to hunt down the rook, but realistically, that's not going to happen. And look at Nakamura's time management here. Way, way, way more powerful than Alireza's. Alireza has a bit of pressure here against this pawn. He's looking to hound the rooks. He wants this one to move so that this pawn falls, and it does fall, but be careful. You cannot take this because of some knight e2 ideas. Knight e2 anyway, bishop takes and rook takes. Alireza has actually managed to do almost enough here, but I'm not sure that it is going to be quite enough. Maybe it's a theoretical draw, but the question is, are you actually going to be able to draw this in 7 seconds? And I'm not even sure that it is a theoretical draw because this king is so incredibly frustrating. But it does look like there is a fortress here. 6 seconds against 25. Do I think that Nakamura is going to try to win this or offer a draw? I think he's going to try and win it. But, well, maybe not. But there we go. Why not? Why not give yourself a chance in actually winning this? You might say it's a little bit of a dirty move to play for the clock here. But remember, it's 1 Bitcoin is the prize here. Huge prize fund. And you have to ask yourself, would Alireza... Wow, okay, so I was saying all of this. I was going to say, would Alireza give a draw to Hikaru in his position? I would say probably not. Now, we don't know for a fact what exactly Hikaru was thinking in this position. Did he intend to repeat? It certainly looks like it. But yeah, somewhat, it's one of those that is always a little bit divisive. Some people will say you should always try and flag that. Others will say you should always give the draw. I'm a little bit less sure myself, but man, a tense first game. Carbon says, I think Duda ended the streak in Norway of 2020. You are actually correct. You are correct, I believe. But Yesipenko nevertheless got a victory, but wasn't a streak-ending victory. Bishop to e6 here. We're taking a look at Hikaru's next game against Shant. I think this is Shant Martyrosian, but please let me know if that is not the case. Hikaru, once again, is just crushing it here. I think it's over. I think it's simply over. What 18 moves? We barely even caught any of this game. Let's actually watch Hikaru. We're going to actually follow his games for a little bit as he is the tournament leader. At least we're going to follow it until there's signs that he's maybe being challenged for the lead. At least we're going to follow it for a few games. Okay, so we've got a Berlin defense here. This is all very standard. Normally you're not used to fianchettoing the bishop, fianchettoing the knight rather, but we see bishop to f5. The knight actually supporting a very, very nice square there. And Alireza, or rather, Hikaru has an interesting strategy here against Alireza. He's saying, I will just play incredibly solidly here against you with the black pieces. A draw is plenty good for me, and so far, well, Alireza hasn't been able to show anything in this particular game. f6, bishop goes to d6. Maybe now we can look to reactivate this knight. Hikaru playing a little bit more aggressively. This rook is hit. The threat is very simple. Rook takes rook is going to be checkmate. So white has to do something about this. Now, I'm not sure what exactly he will do. He goes for king to f1, and now that gives time to stabilize king f7, because when you kick out the knight was defending the pawn, but now everything is safe. So the importance of defending this pawn, bishop f4, targeting the queen, forcing it to move away. Now, this pawn could have been captured, but rook b1 and rook takes b7 with check probably looked a little bit too dangerous. And now Hikaru has what he wants, which is this relatively safe endgame. h6, h5, locking things up. I'm not too sure that Hikaru is going to be in any way worried here. Maybe he's the one with the more realistic option to break in the future. f4, of course, is an option, but if you ever play f4, then at some point, well, it's hard to say, hard to show with the speed of which they're playing, but basically, if you ever play f4, maybe this knight will reroute to e4 in the long term. So we can see that black has broken with f5, and you know, it was a little bit harder for Firouzja to achieve a break himself. So here, pawn takes pawn, and rook e5, knight f4 check. Will Firouzja take it? It's actually met by a draw offer, and the draw gets accepted. Perhaps some rook takes, rook check, king over, rook takes, and rook takes. Both players reasoning this is approximately a draw. Let's just play it. Let's rack a point each, split the points, and move on to the next game. This is the arena format, meaning that you're just playing one game after another the second that you finish. So Hikaru is playing with the white pieces against chess today. I don't know if anyone knows who this is. I certainly don't. But a 3000 rated bullet player is no joke here. No joke. Denying the accusations. Sorry for outing you there. No joke. Yeah, so let's take a look at this game and maybe we move on. Would people like to see, some people are saying, by the way, it's Samsaran Sidipov. Some people are saying that they would prefer to see Magnus versus Alireza. Is this game happening right now as we speak? Let's take a quick look. If we look at the Magnus cam, it is indeed happening. So no, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name there. This definitely seems like a good idea to watch this match. It's, after all, numbers 2 and 3 in this tournament, but numbers 1 and 2 in the world. Magnus Carlsen recently also making headlines with this at this point infamous quip that he's not likely to defend the World Championship title unless his opponent is none other than Alireza Firouza. Quite the statement. But let's see how Alireza is managing against the world champion here. He seems to be a little bit he seems to be in a little bit of trouble here in a battle where both kings are looking a little bit shaky. By far Black's king looks the most shaky, and look at the lack of coordination of the black pieces. Everything are sort of pointing at the king side, but the reality is white with just this rook holds everything together, and the pawns are very, very well placed here. The knight is also pinned, so there's not much that you can do, and you just feel it's going to be a few more moves, couple more moves before Magnus makes the decisive breakthrough. e5 looks very tempting. Pawn takes, queen takes, hits the knight, hits the rook. But knight b5, inviting the last piece into the game, makes perhaps even more sense. If queen takes d4, knight takes d4, this pin, you can deal with it by capturing, but the problem is knight c6 check would come at the end, so that rook would be dropped. f7, opening up the h8 square. Alireza trying his best to patch up that square, but knight c7 is just endless torture here. If knight takes e6, rook takes e6 is still possible. For now, Alireza is managing to just about hold on. He does have an extra rook. That's something to keep in mind. But queen g8 is going to end the game on the spot. Queen g8 missed. Queen g8 here missed. Maiden one missed by Magnus Carlsen, but Magnus didn't need it anyway. He managed to convert here with well, everything was in his favor. Well, except material. He was down a rook, but at the end of the day, what are we seeing here? I was about to make some serious comments. I've forgotten them already. Magnus doesn't seem too concerned about the amount of prize money on the line here. That doesn't seem to be playing into his calculations here with his opening choice. And he's playing Alexander Ingic and not quite showing him perhaps the respect that some people might expect. But I think Magnus does this quite a bit. I'm sure it's nothing personal. He's just having a bit of fun. And well, the reality is that Magnus is so strong that even giving these kind of odds out of the opening, you still expect him to be the favorite. And he has a good position here. He's looking perhaps for bishop to b2, hitting this rook at some point. He's got more space on the queen side. If you move your knight, be careful, because this pawn may be a little bit delicate in the near future. Bishop b2 first. If you are forced to move the rook back, maybe I can even move in with the knight. Maybe here I can position my knight here on d4. Maybe knight g3. But be careful, because the idea with rook f5 was knight e4. Very, very nasty. That's why king g1. Rook goes back to e5. And Magnus doesn't take that rook. He goes bishop d4. And he figures, maybe I don't want to give you such an important dark squared piece, because a lot of the pawns around my king side are on light squares. So I just want to make sure that I don't give you, just to greedily grab an exchange, that I don't give you an attack along the dark squares just yet. Plus, what is your rook going to do? It's more of a liability here. You have to constantly worry about me capturing it. So sometimes the threat is stronger than the execution, and here that seems to be the case. Knight f4. Hello, Childish Brandino. He played the same thing against Alireza. That's crazy, says Dr. Ganto. That is incredible. That he's been playing the Bond Cloud here of sorts. I don't know if that's the Bond Cloud. I don't know, but it's in that same family. But here, Ingic seems to have tricked Magnus slightly, because Ingic is now up pawn. But the big problem for Injic is the clock situation. Here, bishop takes g6 was on the cards, but Magnus looking for a squeeze here, even though he's down a pawn. The position is so good in terms of the pawn structure, his better king, absolutely everything about it, that it's actually Magnus playing for the win here, even down a pawn. Now, bishop to e2 is designed to prevent king g4 ideas for no counterplay here, and now maybe we're going to see rook e5 check. Very, very slow here from Magnus. I think he is losing the thread of the position in terms of his objective advantage, but he doesn't really care so much because he's got so much of a time advantage here on the clock that it's Injic that needs to do something. Otherwise, Magnus is just going to wear down the clock and log the win. There's nothing to do here. That's exactly the strategy. It may not be the prettiest strategy, but it's an effective one here. King b4, defending the pawn, and bishop takes h5, looking to push these pawns up while at some point getting ready to sacrifice the bishop for this pawn. Again, the pawn's moving forward here, and a little trick at the end picks up this pawn, and it is indeed game over. Magnus against Pragnanda. Too Pretty for Jail says, "Hi Alex, big fan here. Are you at the City of Dams?" I presume you mean, am I in Amsterdam? Yes, absolutely. How did you know? King f7 from Magnus. Well, if it's working, why not continue this strategy? You have to wonder though, will Magnus at some point say, I'm not gonna, sacrifice even 1% of an edge out of the opening? Because it doesn't matter how good you are. You can be Magnus Carlsen. There's no way that Magnus isn't losing a little bit of an edge by playing this opening. So you wonder if at some point he's going to be saying, I need to try and fight as hard as possible for the number one position, and I will play as serious openings as are needed. Or is he just going to try and have fun and maybe, just maybe, rival Hikaru's lead even with this particular choice of openings? So let's see what's happening here with Pragnanda. A huge talent, no doubt, at some point will be 2700 plus. Knight a4, targeting this pawn on b2. Material count is level. Magnus, again, very comfortable position here. He's probably going to look to reroute at some point the knight to c5 and maybe to e4. And on e4, it's going to hit this rook, and it's just going to be a monster piece. Way, way stronger than this knight on d4, because the range of squares that it controls is way more effective here. The knight on d4 is more or less under control. Now, you have to wonder, what exactly is Magnus looking for here? Is he looking for some tricks relating to knight g3 at the right moment? First, he's maybe going to try to improve the king position. He might also look for rook g6, rook to g4, and then rook h6, rook to g6, looking to target the pawn on g2. For now, it's a little bit of a game of cat and mouse here in terms of what exactly, like neither side wanting to commit to a particular strategy here. Queen c7, again, doesn't really hint at too much except perhaps g5. Now, if f takes g5, the reason why the queen on c7 is well placed is because it targets the pawn on e5. And now we can see that on the very next move, Magnus is already ready to potentially take it. But this pawn is free. And Magnus does instead shift direction, takes the pawn on c4. Aha, they have narrow houses in Amsterdam. That was the clue. Okay, rook to c2. Wow, what a move. h3. I do not care if you take my queen. This is forced checkmate because king f1, rook f2 check. King e1, rook g1 will be mate. That's why Pragnanda did not take the queen. And now he does have a check here. He's got another check, but after king to d7, the checks are over. And they're certainly not over here for black, who can take like this, or who can just wait. Maybe now capturing knight f2, knight g3. Nothing quite seems to work, but this is an interesting idea. If I just take you, what is the point? Queen takes b2, rook d2. I thought maybe rook g2. Okay, it's getting super messy here. And in the end, Magnus actually messes up the position objectively, but 1 second on the clock for Pragnanda. Can he win all the pawns? I don't think he can. He does flag incredible tenacity there to defend the position from Pragnanda, but ultimately not enough there. Just falling way too behind on the clock, and once again Magnus with this King F2 strategy. It's going to be unbelievable if Magnus actually manages to climb the rankings with this particular strategy. It's going to be simply quite the show. Let's very quickly show the current standings here. We've got Nakamura with 99 points and the fire streak. Incredible stuff. Alireza on 87 points, no streak, while Dr. Championstein, Magnus Carlsen on 84 with a streak. So, this is a huge game here because it means if Magnus manages to win this game, then he is going to have overtaken Alireza in the standings and be in second place. But this time around, it doesn't look so good here for Magnus. If you go e4, I can take that because after pawn takes, knight takes, the queen and the king here were forked. That's why Magnus ends up having to concede a pawn. Now bishop e5 targets the rook. And on top of that, rook d2 is coming. It's absolutely brutal position here, and especially you're playing Alireza here. He loves this stuff. Knight g4. Now after knight e4, e2 check, it's just over. Rook d1. That's it. Queen a5, and it's going to be resignation. So Magnus, maybe some room to reconsider the strategy here. Just under an hour to go. We will see what Magnus does. He gets berserked by Jordan van Foreest. Now Jordan, some of you will know this, others may not, was actually on Magnus Carlsen's winning team here of seconds when he was defending the title successfully against Jan Nepomniachtchi only a month and a half or two ago. And what's quite funny is Jordan berserks him and Magnus says, no thank you, I will go ahead and try to beat you with full time on the clock. Magnus jokingly referring to Jordan as the Blitz punching bag in the video about Magnus' seconds that came out shortly after the match. So definitely there's some history between the two, and Magnus looking for the full points. So in this position here, knight c7, retreating the knight in order to defend the pawn on e6 and challenge the bishop. Bishop h3 is an interesting strategy, looking to press this pawn on e6. Bishop d5, inviting some kind of sacrifices, but they don't quite work. In the meantime, holding together the position. Queen c6, stepping out of this uncomfortable pin. Rook e2 and knight c8, challenging the best white piece here, g4. I think this is an indication running out of ideas a little bit for white. He wants g5 in order to try to crack open this diagonal. In hindsight, perhaps it wasn't fair when I said running out of ideas. Seems like a very good idea actually now, having this constant pressure. A pawn does drop, and rook e8, very, very strange kind of series of blows here. Rook e2 is going to pick up this bishop. On the other hand, it's a little bit of a tricky position here for Magnus because his king is a bit stuck. So if you go g6, king e5, king f6, you have to be very, very careful. Now at the same time, we can see this pawn is extremely dangerous. Black is thankfully just in time, right? If you give this check, king here, I queen, I sacrifice my rook, and then in the end, I'm the one that queens. So rook d7 is kind of an admission of defeat here. Rook has to go back to d1, and rook c2 will keep the pawn, and rook takes b5 with check is really very nasty. Now the king is going to move forward, and now when rook takes, but if rook takes, white would have gotten there in time. So actually, Jordan with a magnificent defense, and it is a theoretical draw here. There's not much that you can do actually to force it into this particular endgame. So incredibly, Magnus held to a draw after he does not berserk Jordan back. So that's got to sting a little bit. Thank you, Chess Dojo. Yeah, so this game, Magnus is playing. Who would people like to watch after Magnus, by the way? We'll maybe throw somebody else on just for a little bit. Shall we watch? Maybe they take the camera to Alireza, or would people prefer Hikaru or somebody else altogether. So in this game, again, Magnus with his king on f2, expanding on the king side. Knight b4 looks a little bit dangerous here because of that d3 square that was being threatened. So knight f4 taking care of that, but bishop takes, pawn takes, and rook c2 looks to me like that would be a nasty little tactic here if Chigalko can see it, and he does find it. And Magnus losing his queen here. He's not going to be too happy here because this could be yet another loss. Bishop takes f5, g takes f5, only option. The knight is pinned. The structure is very, very ugly here, but the question is how do you bump up the pressure if you're black here? g6 makes sense, just trying to step off the g7 square, which was a focal point. Rook g4 fortifying here, picking up the pawn on a2. There may not be much better. Bishop goes to b5, targeting the rook on e8. Rook c8. King moves to g2, and now the knight returns into the game with b4. But Magnus is creating some chances. This is incredible stuff here from Magnus to even give these kind of problems. And remember, rook takes b4 is also in the air. Rook c2 played. Probably a nice move if there is nothing concrete. That it takes courage, though, this kind of a move, because you are facing a series of checks here, whether it's here or here. But somehow rook takes g6, for example. Queen takes g6 with check was the problem, in addition to f takes g6. Please don't mind me with this particular suggestion. I was seeing ghosts there. Rook to d4. Magnus is in serious trouble. Chigalko has him exactly where he wants him. The only thing that Chigalko does not have as good as he might like it is the clock situation. So Magnus' strategy has to be, I'm going to play out the position as much as possible, drag this out for as long as possible, and hope that I might have a chance here on the clocks. But Chigalko is incredibly fast. He's a veteran bullet player, and I think Chigalko is going to do it here. Especially these pawns are extremely fast here, and Magnus, he might even resign. There's even f5 check there in the last move, looked very promising, and the lead is the time advantage is practically disappearing. The pawn on f4 is being hit, captured. King f6, be careful with rook h6. That's the only real concern. And now queen a3 is going to pick up this rook. He goes a different path. Queen a3, we see it there, and Magnus does resign. So Magnus has had a little bit of a nasty streak there, and actually he is now in 4th place. As we take a look at the standings here, we can see that Rob, from what I've heard, 14-year-old FIDE master, I don't know anything else about this incredibly strong player, he is actually now in 3rd place, and Geppetto is in 4th place, with Magnus dropping down as low as 7th place. So let's take a look at Hikaru here, just for this particular game. As he is playing none other than Hans Niemann, who is a fellow American grandmaster, and so they will have some, and streamer, so they will have some history. And here Hans with a big victory with the black pieces. And this game, Hikaru against Alireza, we will not move away from this one. Hikaru with the white pieces, he wants to strike back against after following his defeat, but also he really wants to try and get some points here against the number 2 ranked player. And with Magnus playing the Bond Cloud or similar stuff, you know, Alireza is not messing around with the openings. He certainly wants it as much as Hikaru wants it. So this is perhaps the biggest match in the tournament right now. Okay, so a4, expanding on the queen side. So far, Hikaru, he expands on the king side. g6, looking to try and cover the add f5 square for the invasion of the knight, but giving a target with this pawn. h4, h-file has been opened. King f2, queen e2. Hikaru says, I'm going to keep the queens on the board because I think your king is less safe than mine, which seems fair. Perhaps we're going to see rook h6 and an all-in commitment here with the base of the pawn chain being on f6. That is a danger pawn. We see knight h5. Sorry? Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry about the scene there. Apologies, I was on the wrong scene. So rook c4, queen b5, and queen to c2. putting a bunch of pressure here. Rook a5, preventing rook c5 ideas. I mean, Alireza is just saying, please, let's hope that this defense is just about enough to keep you out. But certainly it looks like at some point the dam is going to break here. Knight b4, striking back, had the option to take the pawn, didn't do so, chose to centralize, keep the position solid, which makes a lot of sense. At the same time now, Hikaru, here a big mistake, knight f8, letting go of that particular pawn. And the problem is that is a couple of pawns here and a serious invasion. Hikaru, an incredible attacking player, as is Alireza, of course, but in this case, he's the one on the defensive side, and he knows intuitively that this is very, very good for him. He gets a couple of pawns, but look at the kind of pawns that they are, and we can see Alireza already just dropping that knight on f8 just to try and grab one of those 2 pawns. But the problem is the king for black continues to be very unsafe. At the right moment, you might even see a sacrifice to enable the knight to jump in here. We see queen g7 check, and after king d6, I wouldn't even be surprised if that's the moment. Now we see queen takes e5, maybe knight takes d4, knight g5 played, targeting this bishop. If you move the bishop, we're going to see bishop h3 ideas, and that's just going to be devastating because it's already too much for black to deal with queen and knight, but queen, knight and bishop would be impossible. So that's why Alireza gives up that piece. But at the end of the day, white can even take this pawn with check. He doesn't. He goes king g4 to defend the pawn. Now he takes it. At the end of the day, look at the material situation. White started off by sacrificing, but it was such a strong sacrifice that by the time that the action was sort of over, it was actually Alireza who had to sacrifice more. King e3, queen g1, king d2. There are no more checks in the position. Rook b8, looking for something here, but there just isn't anything. Queen f7, preparing to defend the g8 square. Perhaps I would have thought maybe it would have made sense to queen first and then queen f7, but I guess it doesn't matter too much. In the end, it's 2 pieces here, and the only concern is, can I get away from the checks? How can I do so? Because I don't have knight f3 because my queen hangs. I can go king here. Alireza putting on quite a stubborn resistance here with queen h2. Incredible series of checks, but he is going to run out of checks, and importantly also out of time. And Alireza just resigns there. There are no more checks, so white 2 pieces to the good and too much time on the clock. Abhinav asks, who is TSM FTXH? That is Hikaru Nakamura. Okay, certainly not a game that we can move away from, and it is Magnus continuing the king f2 repertoire against the tournament leader here, Hikaru Nakamura, with 48 minutes on the clock. Hikaru has been as convincing on day 2 of this event as he was on day 1. I mean, he did lose that game against Hans Niemann, but I'm not sure did he lose anything else. Rook takes e2. Rook takes e2, and Magnus forced immediate resignation there because the point was the knight on e2 defended the queen on f4. Once that knight was gone, it was at least a full piece, if not your queen. Man, that I really I'm going to say it. I think I'm hoping Magnus changes his approach and decides not to play this king f2 stuff. I'd like to see what kind of an impact Magnus can have with 47 minutes on the tournament clock, playing the absolute best that he can. But it's his choice, of course, and Magnus, if from what I've seen him play in the past, I'm sure he will continue to essay this opening. Rook h2 check looked really strong with this idea, and now it's just going to be forced checkmate because if king takes, queen takes f2, and now rook h8 on the next move, just looking completely crushing. And Nakamura, what are the standings at now? Nakamura is on 107 points. Incredibly, FM Rob is on... Oh no, Nakamura now on 112. 12 points ahead of FM Rob on 100. Alireza has dropped out of second place and he has 97 points. So, Hikaru playing against Penguin. And Penguin has a nice position here, I think, against Hikaru. The white king is not looking particularly safe here. Bishop to g4, targeting this knight. maybe looking for to take that knight and then crack the pawn on f4 here and maybe take it for free, because that is a problem. How do you defend this pawn? Rook f1 played with the idea being that at least now if bishop takes, queen takes, pawn takes, I can take back like this. Even still, there may be some ideas that I can take this pawn on b2, and that looks quite good for black. Perhaps that's exactly what he's going for. He does take the pawn. Bishop d5 check ideas are in the air here, though. You have to be a little bit careful, because for example, if you take, I go bishop d5 check, and then I hit this rook, and if you go king f8 to defend, I can actually pick up this rook on f4. Your king will be on f8, and there we go. We see bishop d5 check. I think Penguin falls for this exact trick and has to immediately resign there. So that's a nasty one there for Penguin, who seemed to be in control, but Penguin, who is incredibly tactically tricky, gets tricked by Hikaru. Okay, now may be a good moment to switch away from Hikaru and take a look. Yeah, we have a new number 2 player in the event, Yako Baby from Uzbekistan. So who could this be? An Uzbekistani? Does he? Maybe somebody can tell me in the chat. We are going to go on the Yako Baby TV here. Could this be Nordibek Abdusattorov? Nordibek Yakuboev. Yes, Nordibek Yakuboev, 2600 Grandmaster. Can somebody let me know? I'm not familiar. Can somebody let me know what is Yakuboev's age? Also a 2600 plus junior. So this is scary stuff. He's in second place. Quite an exciting turn of events. Actually, I'm surprised that Alireza has not held on to that second place. And Magnus, of course, no longer challenging, or well, not currently challenging at all. And with 44 minutes on the clock, unless he switches away from this king f2, king f7 openings, you feel like he is not going to be a real contender here. Bishop takes h5. Isn't that just a piece here on h5 for free? That seems to be a little bit of a blunder here. And Yako Baby is trying to, I think, just adjust after that big mistake here. c5, kicking the knight away. But the knight invited, I think, to f5 because you don't have this pin. I can take this bishop with a check. We see bishop takes d3, g6 to prevent the threat of the capture here on h7. Queen moves and takes, and bishop e4. Incredible little calculation here by Azaro, who calculates that after this sequence, queen moves, I will take, and then I'll pick up this pawn, and I'll be up in exchange, and on top of that, I'll be up one pawn. So that is a simple conversion here that we're seeing. Bishop takes a8, d takes e3, looking to make things a bit more complicated. You could potentially take here, and take here, but then it's a queen against two rooks, which makes things a little bit more unclear. So a nice idea here from Yako Baby. Queen f3, defending the bishop. This is the most ambitious, but there's a very nice lesson here in how black is playing this position, which is if you have a lost position, better to be more lost, but the position is messy and complicated and unclear than to only be down, let's say, a pawn, but it's a very simple king and pawn endgame. So changing the character of the position, making it as complex as possible when your position is bad is key. And here queen c1, already it's not so clear. Rook d1. If you take me, I'm going to get my queen back, and I'll have won a rook. But if you don't do this, how exactly do you play against these nasty threats of rook check, bishop h4? Your king would then have to go here, and then queen g5 or even h5 would be checkmate. So now black is actually threatening checkmate, g4. The reason behind this move is, let me try and escape, but queen here, check, queen f4. Now, the queen can move to g3. I'm surprised that did not happen, but king g2 does seem to make sense. Queen c1, going back with all sorts of annoying ideas here. Rook takes b2. The pawn has been lost, however, but rook g1 check, and rook g1 check. King will go here, and incredibly everything is safe here. And Azaro who looked like he had just about let his opponent slip away. He just about does enough there at the very end in the complications. That was crazy. So Yakobaby is playing against Tamojeri, who is untitled, but with a 28-47 rating, you have to assume that they are probably titled. They're just not registered as titled here. More often than not, with this kind of rating, we are speaking of titled players, but we don't know who it is. E6. Yakobaby is in great shape here, because when you get this particular pawn break, the problem is that you just shatter the entire position here of your opponent. Black couldn't have taken because the pawn on g6 was falling, and now we can just see a complete collapse of the position here. Knight goes to f5, the bishop is being hit, rook g8 trying to defend it, but we take it anyway. Bishop h6, hit this rook, and now maybe g7 is coming up very, very soon. Knight g5, king d7 and queen g4. King has to step to c6 because otherwise there were knight e6 was coming in with a check, but knight e6 anyway. G7, I don't know. I mean, you can promote, you can play, maybe rook f8 is the one thing you cannot play. You can play bishop e4, is just a very, very nice move here, looking for c4, and frankly I'm surprised we haven't seen resignation yet, but I think we will see it very, very soon here. Queen e3, knight f6, bishop takes and king takes. So far though, Tamojeri is managing to stay sort of alive here, but queen e6, just going to swap off the queens, still defending this pawn. Knight f5, if you take that pawn, knight f5 anyway, I think, or rook takes e7, and short of a back rank mate here, it's going to be game over. Queen g8 comes in with check, so no time for a back rank mate there on b1, and Yakobaby does get that win. Let's take a look at the standings right now. These are the standings. We've got Hikaru on 119 points, 14 points clear of the field. We've got Yakobaby, he's on 105, but an exciting up-and-coming prospect, two prospects that are very exciting here with 39 minutes to go of the arena are Konevlad, that's Vladislav Artemiev, incredible bullet specialist, and Rebecca Harris, who is certainly another bullet specialist, that's Daniel Naroditsky, and they're both on 104 points. Let's go on to Vladislav Artemiev, just because he is the one that we officially have in in third place, and well, he's been on a monster tear in this part 2 of the arena. Is Magnus still playing? Maybe people can let me know if Magnus is still playing or not. Sorry? The scene. Oh, the scene. I have a Fiona is aka Fionketta. She's in the background. She's thankfully watching the stream, and she's making sure that whenever the inevitable technical mishaps happen, that the damage is somewhat reduced. So appreciate that. Okay, rook to d7, king goes to e3, and rook to d5, king goes to e4. What do we have in this position? We've got 5 pawns against 6. So Azaro, who I don't know who it is, but incredibly strong grandmaster, of course. He's putting the squeeze on here on Vladislav Artemiev, looking to put the brakes on that Artemiev run. And with 39 seconds against 55, it looks like only 2 results are possible here. Artemiev might squeeze some kind of draw, based on the fact that so many rook and pawn endgames, they can quickly, even when you're winning one, they can quickly fizzle out into a draw, as we might be seeing here. G4, we're seeing an exciting counterplay here from Artemiev. King here, I think we're going to see an exchange, and then rook takes h5, and after rook takes h5, material is now level. The structure is still worse for Artemiev, but I think you've got, for example, rook there. He goes instead for this approach with all the pawns on the queen side and the black king here on b7, while the white king is completely out of the game on g4. We can certainly say that Artemiev was not under any real pressure in that position, and now we can see white has simplified it, not even looking to try to press for a win, even though they had an extra pawn. They understood the pawn was no good for an advantage, and instead guiding the game to this drawn position, and Artemiev does get that draw by mutual agreement. And thank you is Lahoudin and Canadian Goose Cub. And the Injera King with the emotes. A strong appearance from Injera King. Okay, so Queen E2, Knight D5, Queen E4. What do people have? Do people have what are the standings at right now? It's 123 against 111. How confident are people that Hikaru is going to take it? Who do you want to take it, actually? Are you rooting for the tournament leader, Hikaru? Are you rooting for some miracle from someone like Magnus? Maybe the young guns, Alireza or Yakubaby? Who do you have as your favorite, or not your favorite rather, but who you would like to see win this event? Splashar is rooting for Eric Rosen. Splashar. I mean, I think Eric might be having a quiet day in this particular arena. We haven't seen him, so we can assume he is having a quiet day. Rooting for Penguin, says the Ghost of Banquo. Alireza. Rooting for the villain, but doesn't say who the villain is. Rooting for the Artemiev comeback would be pretty nice. I'm a fan of Artemiev. He was in myself and Fiona. We used to co-commentate sort of an event that ran for a few weeks called Fiona's Fight Nights, and they were like sponsored battles between top players, and one of them was Artemiev against Mamediyarov, and he's always been such a gentleman, Artemiev, in the interactions, that I always root for him. Just seems like such a nice guy, and so much potential. Was 2700 plus, very at a very young age. Seems to have stagnated now for a few years. I hope he makes a breakthrough into the high 2700 club. I think in terms of talent, from what I hear from other Russian players and things like this, they say that as far as talent goes, he has the kind of talent needed to be 2800 plus, never mind high 2700s. Okay, so in this game he has the white pieces, and Konevlad, he is up one pawn. He's got the bishop against the knight. The knight's a little bit more tricky, but the bishop, when there's pawns on the queen side and on the king side, can be quite useful, because, for example, you can have the bishop defending the king side, but at the same time supporting promotion here of this pawn. Now, rook c1, it's a very smart strategy. Let's try and go after the base of the pawns here. From Karto GM, he picks up a pawn. He loses the base of his pawns. Both players having a similar strategy. King f3, escaping from the target of rook takes f2 here, not trying to have the king pinned to the last rank. Bishop e6 and knight here. Knight goes to d3. You have to be very careful. a5. Konevlad says there are no real tricks. I expect bishop c4 here. Again, the bishop powerfully protecting against the advance of the d pawn, and at the same time supporting the advance of the a pawn. King e4, centralizing and preventing d3 ideas. King g5, looking to activate, perhaps harass these pawns, these h pawns. Rook over, rook c6, targeting the knight. Rook takes c5, will fall with check. Oh, what a clever little trick, and he spotted it instantly. A beautiful mating pattern. I was completely oblivious to it, and more importantly for Konevlad, his opponent went after the pawns but fell into a quick mating net here. And Konevlad, he means business. He's in 4th place. He is not in the game of berserking here with half an hour to go. Just too dangerous of a strategy. Not needed just yet. There are, of course, more than one prize for this. I know that there's a lot of cake token points, or cake tokens for the 2nd place. So it's not all about can you win that full Bitcoin. And so if you're in Dropstone's position, you're ranked number 7, it makes sense to berserk. But if you're in Artemiev's position, playing a little bit safer, when you're fighting to get onto that podium, when you're so close, makes a lot of sense here. Queen takes a3, threatening queen b2 is a possibility, but after rook b1, maybe Artemiev is saying, what is my follow-up here? Because my queen is now going to be a little bit out of the game. D takes e4. It's a bit risky because your king is going to feel unsafe for the rest of the game. And it's not that you're necessarily going to get checkmated, but there might be a perpetual that comes along. Fortunately, for now, the g-pawn blocks those nasty checks along the g-file, and the rook on f8 covers the checks along the 8th rank. So for now, everything is okay. And in fact, g6 looking, white says, take my pawns, I just want to open lines. And here h5, we see that e3, queen goes to d3, putting a bunch of pressure. Bishop a6, nice idea. The point is queen takes c3 was really nasty, connected with a3 ideas. Beautiful play on both sides of the board here from Konevlad. He stops the attack. Dropstone has 10 seconds on the clock, has no attack, no material, just resigns. An all-Russian battle here in this game. Maybe one more that we can watch. Vladislav Artemiev here with the white pieces against the Russian talent, Andrei Yesipenko. So queen c2 and d3 here. Slow maneuvering start to this game. b5 and b3 just looking to protect that slight central space advantage that white has. Very typical of the openings that Artemiev plays. He's not known as an opening specialist. He's just looking to get a decent position, and then he's a brilliant tactician and a brilliant middle game player who understands, how to get an edge in these kind of positions. Bishop takes f6 might be necessary though, because of rook c8. He winds up in this very awkward arrangement here with the queen and the bishop, where black has knight h5 type ideas at the right moment. But on the other hand, it is holding, and he does have a nice bind along those central dark squares. b4 pressing, trying to get a little bit of an advantage on the queen side, and knight f8, not a passive move, but in fact an aggressive move, looking to reroute that knight to e6 from where it can target both the queen and the bishop. Will it happen straight away? White's idea is to chop off that knight. So first bishop to c8, bishop drops back, and now knight e6 is an option, but not an option that he decides to go for. He goes for bishop to d7 instead, allowing knight to g5, targeting this pawn on f7. I'm a little bit confused as to why that is, because now knight e6 happens, but white is able to get rid of that knight and maintain the queen on f4. In fact, now rook c6 ideas look very strong to me. He goes for knight c6 instead, perhaps opening up this diagonal for the queen to invade on c7, especially if something like knight h5, queen c7 exists, because not only do you have the diagonal open, but if bishop takes, you can actually rely on that knight on c6 to defend that bishop. So very interesting coordination. Rook c8 challenging for the c-file is not an option because of knight takes e7. Yeah, smash. That may be true. Geppetto is into second, they say. Let's take a very quick look. No, Yako Baby is in second right now. Perhaps Geppetto took the second place very briefly before Yako Baby took it back. Knight takes e6. Queen takes e6. e3. You kind of wanted to play f takes e6 to improve your pawn structure, but then that second rank would have been very weak. So d4, and this is a nice positional squeeze from Konevlad, who I think is just going to pick up this win here. He's got so much time on the clock. The position is so horrific. You've got this pawn falling at the right moment. Bishop takes e3 is just about the only counterplay that he needs to stop. And with this move, he does stop it, because queen e7 is forced. You can even exchange the queens, pick up a pawn, and it looks really, really horrible. So these are the standings, and let's talk about who we're next going to follow. Maybe Geppetto, who is he is in second place after all. Now he's on 120 points. He's 8 points behind Hikaru. So this is a very interesting game. He's playing none other than Penguin GM. Any Lichess regulars and perhaps non-Lichess regulars will know all about the name Penguin GIM, especially in the context of Bullet. And this is Bullet, although Penguin may be the greatest hyper bullet player on the planet. If not, he's right up there. This, fortunately for Penguin's opponents, doesn't quite feed into that strength. And in fact, here, white does resign because there was some nasty queen h3, queen g2 attack along the dark squares, and there was really nothing that Penguin could come up with against that. So that's a huge win. If we look at the standings, we can see it's why haven't they updated? Did I imagine this? Oh, okay, no, there are 122 there. We see against still 128 for Hikaru. So that's only a 6-point lead, and Hikaru might be feeling a little bit of pressure here by this, the rise of Geppetto. Does anybody know who Geppetto is? Some say it's Nepo. Could be, could be. I've never even heard of this name before. I don't know if it's a relatively new account, but I don't even have, like, sometimes I might have a little bit of a suspicion based on the playing style or someone said, you know, this kind of stuff, but never heard of Geppetto before. Okay, so what is happening here? 19 seconds. And actually, it's brilliant news for Geppetto that rank number 78 here is going for a Berserk, because this allows Geppetto, just gives the best odds that he's going to actually just pick up a win here. And he doesn't have a winning position. He has an equal position, but he does have 7 seconds more on the clock. And the question is, will that be enough? He dropped this pawn probably needlessly. He could have gone to h6. The position is equal, but will he just push for the win here? Or not? He can try and push to try and hound his opponent's rook, but on the other hand, his opponent has a pawn here on g6, and we can see maybe we're going to see, we are going to see an attempt here with 11 seconds against 2 seconds, and I think Geppetto is going to do it. He's going to get the flag, and he gets it, and the chess experience played a great game, but not enough. The name seems to be a reference to Hearthstone, so sounds like it could be Nepo. I'm not familiar at all with Hearthstone, but I will take your word for it, Muffin Man Steph. So Geppetto is in striking distance. The standings are 127 against 132, and Hikaru did berserk the last game. D5 here we see. Does Geppetto have a chance here in this game to really put the squeeze on against Dropstone, who is David Paravian from Russia? He doesn't seem to have anything at all here. Just seems like very, very much equal position here. A3, more space for Paravian, but be careful, because these pawns, you know, rook d4, for example, if you go rook c2, I go rook d8. I'm surprised now with the king is pinned, but we have bishop takes b4, rook takes b3 is the clever point. King c4 here and takes, that would be an option. He doesn't go for this though, and now rook c3. Geppetto has butchered that position from a position that looked equal, and he loses it very, very fast. And now he's playing against Vatanelende, who has played rook a3 and rook to g3. We have to stick with this game. So it's a battle of the berserkers against the rovers. The rook over from a1 to g3 in very little time. Having played against Vatanelende a multitude of times, he's incredibly strong. And the fact that the rook went from a1 to a3 to g3 doesn't mean that you should take this person in any way lightly. They will play one mean middle game, as they say. Okay, so castle, knight to d7, targeting this pawn. Bishop goes back to g5, forcing black to move the knight back to f6. Rook f8. Unclear on what plan to do here. Queen d6 from Geppetto. The problem is, you maneuver too much. You might find yourself in a cozy endgame or something like this after a bunch of clever maneuvering, but the problem is you're also going to find yourself with 5 seconds on the clock. Geppetto has only 31 seconds. Vatanelende is a fast player here, and I have to say, I think we're going to see another loss here for Geppetto unless he can really stir something up here against the white king. ASAP. e5, that is the idea, but d6 looking for counterplay themselves, and the problem is queen takes c7 is going to force the queens off the board. Here we see queen f5. Queen f5, if d takes c7, we have rook takes c7, which would hit the queen, giving some time for black to actually do what they... Oh, but this is it. This is game over, because after rook takes, we're going to see rook d8, and it's just game over. You can put the rook here, but at the very, very least, we're going to exchange everything, and then that knight on h4 falls. You have no time. Geppetto losing this game. That was a painful... that was a painful loss for Geppetto, because look at the standings now. Geppetto is still still incredibly in second place with 127 points, but that's after 2 losses. Imagine if he was on a streak, so imagine if instead that had been 2 wins, he actually would have had, I think he would have been tied in the lead. And now, that could be it, because Hikaru has just gone in, as you can see from the standings, Hikaru has just gone in 5 extra points, so he berserked and won that game while being on a streak. That's huge, and that opens up a 13-point gap. Okay, one more game of Geppetto we might take a look at. Someone says, yes, Geppetto is Nepo because he has a video using that account. That's interesting. Okay, so Geppetto, who some say is Nepo and some believe is otherwise, having the black pieces here and really desperately needing a win after an incredible last few games there from Hikaru, who just seems to be hellbent on dominating this second chapter of the Agadmator Cake D5 Christmas Arena. Bishop h6, very dangerous move, because the idea is I want to take this bishop on d2 and then go bishop takes e3 and just smash the entire position open. Rook e2, that's just a rook. Queen takes e2, and we're going to see resignation there from Ninja. So let's take a look at the standings. We've got 140 against 130. Who would people like to watch for these remaining 19 minutes? I'm aware that Hikaru is streaming. That's the only reason why I'm not immediately jumping onto the tournament leader right now. Perhaps viewers of this particular show would like to watch someone else. Danya had been a suggestion, but he has dropped to number 8 with 19 minutes on the clock. I feel like we should be looking at one of the tournament leaders here. But people want to watch Daniel. Let's watch a couple of Danya's games. Why not? So let's go onto the Danya cam. He is playing against Andrei Yesipenko, and he is berserking. He needs those points as fast as possible if he wants any kind of shot at a podium finish here. Bishop takes d5. Queen e7, looking for bishop e4 ideas. Queen f3, covering this diagonal, looking to sacrifice rook e3. That's going to be it. Yesipenko will probably resign here. I think there's just nothing that you can do, because you're going to lose this knight, and then you're just going to be down a full rook. And once again, I'm on the wrong scene. Okay. Canadian Goose Cub. You did indeed call it. You did indeed call it, to be fair. Alright, so here we see a tactical exchange of pieces there, just a temporary piece sacrifice because there was a check. And now this position, I think it was something like a London. It looks very much like a London. A little bit of a boring middle game position, but there's possibilities to squeeze here, to squeeze the opponent. The pawn on d5 is hit here. Queen e6, queen goes to c2. Looking maybe for queen b3. No, queen e2. I think Hans is controlling the position here with the black pieces very well. No pressure here for black. The only slightly vulnerable point is this pawn on d5, but the knight is defending it very, very, very well. A lot of maneuvering. White is looking to break down the black center in order to activate his bishop. He does do that. It comes at the cost of some weaknesses here along the light squares. We might see an exchange here, an exchange sacrifice at the right moment, but for now, that is not the case. Perhaps bishop c7, looking to dislodge this knight, is a possibility at some point in order to target this pawn. In any case, rook e7 puts a stop to those ideas. King f3. Very slow, very patient maneuvering game from both sides here. We might see pawn takes. No. I think Danya will be looking for some e4 kind of tricks, tactical tricks. Maybe e4 right now. Why not? Pawn takes and rook takes. At least we get rid of that annoying isolated pawn. But at the end of all of these exchanges, Hans Niemann still has a very comfortable position. c4 makes sense. Creating a passed pawn, but rook a5 does open up the line of attack to this pawn on a2, and Hans immediately exploiting this. Hans playing very, very well, and you have to feel like Rebecca is going to need nothing short of a miracle here to survive in this game. I just feel like Hans really controlled the position, even though it was very, very sharp throughout, but he controlled the position, kept a very good pace as well on the clock, and right now he's up he's not up a pawn anymore, but he's got the far better minor pieces. He will come knight e4, he'll target this pawn and the bishop. Time was also an issue, so Danya with a resignation. So, what are the standings right now? We've got Hikaru, 15 minutes to go and 13-point gap. Geppetto, he is in second place with 130 points. Yako Baby, he is on 128 points. I'll be right back 1 second. Sorry guys, I just needed to pick up some tissues I had forgotten. And one of the things that I don't know if you guys are very susceptible to it, but it was only on the end of December, right at the very end of December, that we came back from 7-week stay in Thailand. And I remember when I had gone from Europe to Thailand, I fell ill. I got a cold from this like big temperature change, the weather change. And now when I came back, I also have been feeling under the weather, and I think it's once again like my body just not struggling to adapt to go from like 30-degree heat to snow, so okay, rook e1, bishop goes to d4, queen c7, rook takes e7 and queen takes e7, queen d3 and a6. Everything looking kind of okay here for white more so than for black, I feel, especially with the clock situation here. Bishop goes to f4. This pawn at some point can be picked up. Rook e1. I mean, the position, maybe it's around equal actually. Now we've got 5 pawns each, so I think the position is roughly equal, but you have to be a little bit careful here if you're black. F4 ideas. Now queen check and check. No f4 played. Instead g6, queen e6 check. The position just looks roughly equal, but the question is, will one side try and push? The side with the advantage in that respect is Cash Vampire. With the white pieces, he's got 4 extra seconds on the clock, and maybe this is a sign that he's starting to push the position a little bit. Bishop c1, looking to defend that pawn. Bishop e5, f4. Bishop goes to c7, looking for some g5 ideas, coupling up with this bishop, but those are prevented, and now queen takes f4 defends absolutely everything. And Cash Vampire has actually collapsed. Queen takes d2 and bishop takes b2. Does Rebecca Harris have the speed to convert this position? No doubt about that. He even has more time on the clock by the time that Cash Vampire resigned. So a nice victory there for Rebecca Harris, who is on 124 points, and he is with 12 minutes on the clock. He definitely has a chance to make it to the podium. But first prize, we can remind one, it's 1 Bitcoin, 2,500 DFI, which, at least as is indicated here, is around $10,000 for second prize, and 500 DFI, which is about 2.5K, $2,500 for third prize. So this is really what a lot of the players are battling. Players like Danya Narditsky or Paravian. I don't think that they feel we can bridge the gap to first place. Simply too much of a gap. I think the only person who can consider that is Geppetto. So maybe let's take a look at the Geppetto cam once more, because he absolutely needs this to be a win. He has berserked. He's in second place. If he wants to challenge Hikaru, he needs Hikaru to, he needs Hikaru to lose, And at the same time, he needs to win almost basically every game between now and the end of the tournament. So we will see if he can manage it here. G takes f6, looking very promising here. He has to be a little bit careful about back rank ideas himself. Bishop f2, position is looking incredibly sharp. Knight e7, incredible. Queen a4. If queen takes a4, rook c1, this may have been missed. What a move. b3. Fighting back though, was it a good move? Because now the queen is hit and the rook is hit. It was a beautiful move, but bishop d4. Was bishop d4 working somehow? He gets bishop d4 anyway now. Oh, that's so beautiful. If queen takes, queen c1 is mate. While if king b1, queen b2. Wow. Inspired stuff there from Pragnanda, and not what Geppetto wanted. He does not want Pragnanda to, you know, show some textbook tactical mastery. He wanted a win there at all costs, and now he's got to play the world champion Magnus Carlsen, who, even though he is in 20th place, has not shied away from championing the King F2 Bon Cloud or Bon Cloud cousin, whatever it may be. And to be honest, Magnus looks to be in okay shape here. The position, it's funny, Magnus plays this King F2 idea, but it's black who seems to have been irresponsible with their king. Although now things are looking a little bit better. Knight f7 is a big threat. Rook f8 puts a stop to that. Bishop f3, unpleasant because the rook cannot move without losing this bishop. So that's quite nasty there. And maybe also at the right moment we're gonna see a targeting of this pawn. Bishop d2, very, very nice idea, saying I'm not interested. Instead, when you take me here, I'm gonna have all sorts of pressure here. No more checks for you. This is the threat of checkmate. And Magnus putting a second nail in the Geppetto coffin there. Patrick asks, where in Europe am I? I'm in Amsterdam right now. Incredible stuff there. And if we look at the standings, we can see that it's a 12-point gap, with Geppetto having an absolute nightmare over the last 10 or so games. And you have to say it's really been a relief for Hikaru, who I think with 12 points, 9 minutes to go, a player of Hikaru's caliber, I think with that kind of a lead, we can say this is a sort of a victory lap here for Hikaru. I just can't picture Geppetto or anybody else catching up with him at this late stage of the event. So knight takes b6 here. Let's take a look at what is happening here. Knight goes to c4, targeting this pawn. But again, Artemiev is saying you're going to suffer a lot here. And this is horrific if you're Geppetto, because this is the kind of position you're probably going to lose it, but you're not going to lose it immediately. So you're going to lose it after suffering and letting that timer of the clock run down. And the reason is, you know, you're down a pawn, there is very nasty attacking possibilities, and you also have less time on the clock. That's why you're probably going to lose the position, but it's only probably. You might get back in it, so you feel like you cannot resign. And those situations, they can be very, very unpleasant, unless, of course, the miracle happens and you turn it around. Let's see if this is actually what happens, or if Geppetto is able to turn things around. He's definitely looking to generate as much counterplay here against the white king as possible, but he needs to keep both rooks on the board in order to give himself some attacking chances. The problem with that is that these 2 pawns are now connected and incredibly dangerous. b6, rook, oh wow, what a move. Rook takes, bishop takes, king here, and rook takes h2 is the mating pattern in question. That's a beautiful move. Totally missed. Wow, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Missed. Incredible stuff. g2, and he does force a resignation. Incredible skill there from Geppetto. A tactically beautiful shot to trick Artemiev, who is not one to be tricked. That was incredible. The standings, someone says, can I find them? Somewhere here are the standings currently. 147 for Hikaru, 136 for Geppetto. 6 minutes to go. Hikaru on fire as well. So the fight really, I think, is for second place. And it's intense. Dropstone is on 136 points. Geppetto on 136 points. Penguin on 135, but he's on fire. Yako Baby is on 135. And even Vatenelende is on 132, but on fire. So all of these players are absolutely in it. Konevlad, you have to feel for him, because had he won that game, he was in prime contention for second place, but now he is practically out of it. Let's see what Geppetto can do here against Georg Meyer. Geppetto needs a win to even with a win, I don't think he has any chance to beat to come first in this event so far. But a win will take him very, very far towards securing his second place finish here. Queen goes to c7. A loss, however, is probably going to knock him out of second place. We can see in the standings he already is out of second place, with Dropstone having the same points as him, but he would of course recover that position with a win here. Queen c7. What is the material count? We have Geppetto up 1 pawn, but it's not really enough, and he goes for that draw. Georg Meyer happy to agree to a draw, and Geppetto happy with that extra point and avoiding defeat with, or potential defeat, with those pawns being just a little bit too fragile. Okay, so Geppetto once again, but what are the standings? Standings are Geppetto with 137, so we are keeping an eye on second place here. Bishop to d7, queen takes, and rook takes b7, the pawn falls. Queen b3. Geppetto goes to e5, looking to kick back this horrible knight. Bishop, horrible in the sense that it's such a strong knight, you want to kick it away, it's horrible for black. And now maybe some bishop c4 ideas, hitting the rook and the knight at some point. For example, if rook takes, there might be bishop c4. In the meantime, a pawn for a pawn. And now black is down a pawn, but his pieces are very, very active. He has the bishop pair. So you feel like it's approximate equality here. But that's not what Geppetto wants. He wants a victory here. He goes for e4, giving up this rook. I'm a little bit surprised by this decision here from Geppetto, but he saw further, and he saw that in the end of that sequence, that pawn on f2 is very fragile. And could it be that Geppetto tricks Esquire in a very similar way to how he tricked Artemiev the last time, with an attack along, an attack combining rooks and bishops. And here, well, this is a very, very dangerous looking position. I'm not seeing more than a series of checks here. Where is the actual win? He goes for bishop h4. That stops rook d8, which is very, very nice. But what does it actually set up? After knight e7, the point is, if you take, now it's just going to be a draw if you just go for all these checks. But if you don't go for the checks, what else do you have? You know, white had also very, very strong attacking possibilities. He goes king there, but I think ultimately it's still a drawn position. What he can do is he could have gone for a check and then taken this rook and tried to win on time. But Geppetto ultimately choosing not to do that. But that could be very, very costly, because Penguin GIM has actually zoomed up to second place, and it's only a 9-point gap with 3 minutes to go. Do you feel it's even possible here? Hikaru would need to lose every single game between now and then, but even 9 points in order to bridge that gap. Penguin needs to win. He needs to win 3 games probably, unless he decides to win. Let's say he wins this one and then he berserks and he gets 5 points for that. He could potentially do that, but even then that would require Hikaru to just not tally up any more points between now and the end of the tournament. So you feel like Hikaru's place is secured, but what a run towards the end here from Penguin. Can he keep up the momentum and at least secure second place for himself? He's definitely a big favorite to do this right now, and he didn't berserk, so as Pedro Sorio is saying, he's maybe just trying to keep that second place. He's trying to secure that second place. It's no joke. 10k, of course it's no 1 Bitcoin, which is 40k plus, but 10k is it's not a bad day's work, right? For a couple of hours of chess play. And so Penguin with a nasty little fork here. He's hitting the queen and the rook, Queen goes to d2, picking up Chigalko's rook, and position is just dominant. Chigalko has thrown all of his pieces at Penguin, but ultimately he's not really getting anywhere. These pieces are just sort of sitting there. They look threatening, but they're not actually doing anything. And so Penguin maybe can even scoop up this pawn. I'm surprised he hasn't, just to destabilize this knight. But Penguin, I think, maybe has his eye on the money here with this pawn on d3. Although bishop f4 is a little uncomfortable. And this is what I meant by rook takes d5. Destabilizing that knight might be nice because the knight controls some critical squares. The point is this: bishop takes e5 wants to be met by queen takes h7 as a follow-up. You have to prevent that, but now that pawn on f7 has been lost. On the other hand, Penguin has managed to stabilize the position and maybe is going to be looking for some rook h7 at the right moment. But what an annoying knight this is still. So Penguin looking to eye up this pawn on d5. Perhaps he'll get it at some point. I think now Penguin is going to be quite happy. Knight e5 though, knight f6 though is a tactical trick, and Penguin has blown all of his advantage and more. If anybody can win this position, it's Sergei Chigalko. However, the key question is the clock situation, and Chigalko accepts Penguin's offer of a draw, which makes sense because with 15 seconds on the clock, it was always going to be the last game, and that is it. Penguin securing with 8 seconds on the clock. I don't think anybody can catch him except maybe a tie from David Paravian, but I don't think he's even playing. So with seconds on the clock, Penguin secures second place, but the congratulations has to go out to the player who put on an incredibly dominant performance both in the first part of this tournament and today in the second part of this tournament. That is Hikaru Nakamura. Many people, because he is sponsored by chess.com, we know that there is a lot of he's playing the majority of his chess there. Many people have been speculating on how he would do were he to join an event here, one of the big events on Lichess, and well, it has to be said, he's answered that question resoundingly. He is one of the very, very best bullet and blitz players in the world, and he's shown that across over a very long time span, across many different platforms and many different events, both live and online. And so congratulations to Hikaru for a very, very impressive victory. In second place, Penguin, who seems to always have that extra gear that he can go into when others may be tiring a little bit. I've seen this happen time and time again, where towards the end he racks up a hell of a lot of points, and this time around he certainly did this. I'm not quite sure. Yes, Fiona is pointing out to me that I was speaking without any camera there. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I'm a rusty. I was always a rusty streamer at best, and nowadays I stream so little that when I do, it's a little bit of a car wreck. But hopefully, you guys enjoyed. Nevertheless, enjoyed this incredibly strong event. I should say, to wrap things up, I should say in third place, we have to give a shout out to Dropstone, aka David Paravian, very, very strong Russian grandmaster, and he manages to squeeze into outright third place with 140 points. A little unfortunate for Yako Baby, who just gets edged out there. He finishes on 139 points. Geppetto similarly on 139. You have to feel that if Geppetto had been a little bit more pragmatic about trying to rack up enough points to secure second place, rather than berserking to try and catch up to Hikaru, which was always maybe a little bit of an unrealistic dream, especially when at the end he went on a little bit of a rough streak, Geppetto. So if at some point he had changed gears and decided to rack up points, we might have seen Geppetto in second place. But as is, he is out of the prizes. He comes in fifth place with 139 points. Artemiev 136, but having played very, very few games relative to the other players on the top 10. So you have to wonder, Artemiev with a 3192 bullet rating on lead chess, what kind of damage could he have done had he played an equal number of games? He may have been able to compete for first place. Vatin Elende in seventh place. Night King, aka Alexander Bortnik, here comes in 8th place. And finally, in 9th is Grandmaster Watneg, and International Master Man United Pro in 10th place, a regular of all of these kind of bullet and blitz events, and always to be seen somewhere near the top. So congratulations on very strong performance to everybody here who finished in the top 10. But once again, Hikaru, incredible performance, incredible consistency. A win rate of 75% is a massive win rate, higher than Penguins 69%, higher than Dropstones 64%. Then again, a more conservative Berserk rate, but that's what you can afford to do when you are being consistent, and when you do go into the event in the lead, you don't need to take as many chances. Go for a higher percentage of wins and not have to do the stress of such frequent berserking. So, how did Magnus end up doing? Yeah, that is a big question. Where did Magnus end up? He ended up in 14th place with 120 points. You have to wonder, how would Magnus have done if he hadn't played King F2 and King F7 every single opening? But these are questions to which we'll never know the answer. I'm sure that those who benefited from Magnus's drop out of the podium positions will be will not be thinking about these questions too much. But certainly, as a spectator, you might be left wondering, where exactly, just how high would Magnus's name appear on the final standings if he was playing regular openings? One last comment: Alireza Firouza, he did not land in the, not in the podium, but did not land in the top 10. That has to be a disappointing concluding part of the event for Alireza Firouza, one of the great talents of modern chess. Okay, so Sushidari says, huge fan since your commentary of match between Artemiev versus Shaq. I appreciate that, and that was a great match. Hopefully I'll have an opportunity to do commentary on events as exciting as that in the future. In any case, thank you to Lee Chess for giving me the opportunity to do commentary for this event. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys found the event to be exciting. I thought the chess was, of course, of a very, very high standard, and hopefully this is not just a once-off, but this marks just one more chapter in this trend of crypto and other big sponsors turning their eyes towards online chess as a good partner for organizing exciting events. So, with that said, I wish you all a great evening. I've been International Master Alex Astaneh, and I hope to see you guys again in the not so distant future. So take care.